Welcome back to My Best Friends and Engineer. I'm Libby.
And I'm Lexi.
And today we're going to do an episode all about the Netflix documentary Picture a Scientist. So this is basically a documentary about women scientists and basically gives a really interesting overview of like the issues that women face in STEM.
Yes, so I will read out the little description just for some background. So on Netflix, it says in this documentary, leading women scientists discuss the inequalities they faced as they set out to create a new formula to make STEM open to all.
And I originally found this documentary because a coworker at my job, who is a woman, recommended it to me. And she was like, she is also like very emotional like me. And she was like, you need to watch this. I cried the whole time, so I was like, oh, okay, gotta watch it. So we think this would be a great topic to talk about for you guys today.
Yes, but before, let's do some housekeeping. So I think we can start with our little tea of the week.
Yes. How about you go first? Update us. How has your week been? I feel like we haven't caught up in a while because you went on your vacation and we like batched episodes to be able to post them. So let us know what's going on.
Yes. Okay. So took a week off. We drove to Yellowstone and did a few other national parks. We did Grand Teton. Where else? We did Custer. We went to Wyoming. It was so fun.
Oh my
We did
goodness.
rafting. Yeah, we did everything. It was just
Granola Girl Summer.
Granola Girl Summer. Yeah, so it was a very wholesome week. That was the first week I took a very, extended amount of time of PTO. So that was kind of nerve-wracking because again, you don't have service in Yellowstone, so I couldn't, catch up on Teams or look at my emails, which was good. It was a very good disconnect. So, and you should do that. You shouldn't be, online
Always
when you're
online.
on PTO. Yeah, but the thing was, the Saturday we were leaving, they were running a production run. Two of them actually that we had to rerun. So I was nervous. I was checking my Teams on before I lost service. I was is everything all good? But yeah, I came back to only 100 emails, so it was good. That was manageable.
Did you get through all of them already, or do you still have quite a few to go through?
Yes. So I took Monday. I was okay, this is the day I will sit at home, work from home, catch up on everything, and then I was on site the next 2 days after that. But I was Monday, I need to just catch up on stuff. But yeah, so overall, very good, very wholesome, and yeah. How about you? How's your week?
Wait, I want to know, what was your favorite head to see at the heads?
the George Washington. He's the one that the Snapchat filter picked up the glasses, yeah. The heads. I was what heads are we talking about? So she means Mount Rushmore.
Mount Rushmore. Oh my god. I was what is that monument called? The heads.
No, it was so funny because Joey and I, we were walking up and we're wait, we don't even know who's who. I'm maybe we should read, But it was very interesting because the area outside of Mount Rushmore, it reminds me of Wisconsin Dells because it's very kitschy.
Really?
Yeah, it was very touristy. So that was very interesting. I really liked it though. It was, it was really nice. It was very secluded, it felt like. So I wish we kind of spent a little bit more time there, but we grinded on the drive. So basically we did 8 hours from Yellowstone to Mount Rushmore. And then the next day we did 12 hours.
Oh my gosh.
We were we want to get home. We don't want to stay in a hotel. So we got home Saturday, or I guess Sunday morning at 1 a.m.
Oh my god. So
I was just
sleep all day?
Sunday, day wasted. Yep, no, I felt so bad. So today's a better Sunday. I've been a little bit more productive. So
good.
Yeah, but how about you? How was your week?
Good. I've been really into hot yoga, which I feel like last time we recorded, I was maybe trying it for the first time. But I am so into it. It has become my little thing that I do. I try to do it at least twice a week. So one day during the weekday and one day on Saturday. But basically, the room gets 99, 100 degrees. It's so hot. And there's different classes you can take. But the one that I really like is called Sculpt. And I don't know if you've done hot yoga Sculpt, but it's basically a little HIIT class almost. We're doing cardio and you've got weights and you're doing it's really good. You do circuits, and I get so sweaty. I didn't know my body could get that sweaty. My arms, my shins, my neck, my face, I'm blinking sweat into my eyes. It's so intense. And last weekend I had my mom and sister do it with me, And after we all jumped in the lake, like with our little yoga outfits on, because we were so sweaty, we were like, we need to dry or cool off, wash off a little bit before we go home. But I've been really into it. I'm hoping that I can keep it up. Also, another new tea of the week. I got a new boss, so kind of a little change up. My boss that I had in this new job, he is going to a different department, and so now I'm gonna have a new boss, which is I'm like not happy or sad. I'm pretty neutral because I'm a little sad because I did really like my boss. And we were kind of like I feel like I've hit 3 months at my job, so just starting to get in the groove of things, you know, between like our personalities and like how we work together. So I'm gonna have to kind of like start that foundation again, like that relationship again with a new person. But overall, I'm really interested to see how it goes. Monday, when this launches, will be like the first official day, like calendar day, that I have a new boss. So I'll have to like update you guys because I don't know about you, Lexi, but I've never been in a job where like I get it, my boss changes. So hopefully, I'll have some good tips to talk about on the podcast.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it would be helpful and like interesting to see how they differ in their little managerial ways. Because you're at the same
Mm-hmm.
company, so obviously, like at your previous company, it's gonna change. You know, you're working on different projects, but it'll be interesting to see how this new manager deals with how they the processes at your company. So keep
I
us updated.
know. I'll have to
Also, I
keep you
went to
updated.
brunch. Yeah, I went to sorry, I totally just cut you off. Maybe
No, go ahead.
sorry. I went to brunch this morning with Kayla, who we interviewed in our second episode, episode 2. Go check it out. And we
Yes.
were talking about how you're into yoga now. So, and
Oh,
I'm
I'm
into
so into
Pilates.
it.
Yeah, and I'm into Pilates now. And I was thinking that would be a good, like, Pilates and yoga. I feel like that would be just a very good combination. So maybe I will. Maybe I
Mm.
will get into it. We'll see. We'll see.
Maybe we should one day host a live event, engineers who do Pilates or
Oh
yoga.
my god. Wait, that's actually a good idea.
Wouldn't
Cuz
that
you
be
wouldn't
fun?
think, yeah, you wouldn't think that, I feel like those are more like the lifestyle influencers.
Yes.
They kind of do that, but
I know.
engineers need some Pilates and
We
yoga
need
too. We
a
got
stress reliever.
yes. That's actually a good idea. I'm down.
Yeah. So I started therapy and I'm going to therapy through BetterHelp. I don't know if you've like ever seen ads for that or anything like that, but I'm going because like I've just been kind of low key very stressed out lately with like my job and like having to be in a car driving to work 14 hours a day. And I was like, I think I just need to try this for a little bit. And it was so funny. She was like trying to give me tips on like how I can be enjoying life more and not like so stressed out about like worrying about time management and stuff. And she was like, I feel like you should try yoga. And I was like, girl, I'm 2 steps ahead of you. I'm doing the hot yoga already. Okay. We need some more tips.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Excellent. I
So
have been seeing those like constantly on my feed. I'm like, do they know something that I don't? Do I need it?
I did too, and I was like, subliminal messaging. They knew that I was stressed out, so
I'm like, what are you trying to say? I'm like, it's like you're probably right, but stop.
yeah. So I'll have to keep you guys updated if I like it or not. It's like you pay month to month, so I get paid for 1 month, and I'm gonna do it for a month, and if I don't like it, I don't have to keep doing it. So I'll have to keep you guys updated. But I think we can get into tea of the week for our listeners, unless you have anything else to share.
Nope, I am all good. I was gonna say something about the yoga thing. Have you ever done the goat yoga? Remember we used to
Go,
have
yo.
that, and like you do yoga with goats apparently. Or I
What?
mean, I'm sure there are multiple animals. Like I'm sure there's like a bunny one. I don't know. But
No.
In Oxford, we used to. So my sorority set up like a little event. And it was do yoga with goats, but it was always on a
Did you do
Sunday.
it?
And no, I did because it was Sundays, and Sundays were my sacred like do homework all
Uh
day
huh.
days
Uh
and
huh.
catch up, which
Yeah.
probably is why they wanted to do yoga on a Sunday so you can de-stress. But clearly, I was
You're
stressing
like,
myself out
I
even
don't
more.
have time for that.
So
I don't have time for these goats.
yeah, but yeah, I'm like I don't want them to touch me. Like please don't
I
touch
would
me
be scared. I would
while
be
I'm in
scared that they're
weird.
like, come headbutt me or something, like push me over. Aren't
I
goats
know.
aggressive?
I was like, please. Sometimes they're funny
Yeah.
though, the little
Yeah.
videos. But I'm like, please don't touch me while I'm doing weird movements with my body.
Yeah.
It's like I need to focus on that. So, but yeah. So maybe our event is goat yoga.
Goat yoga. And then after we can eat goat cheese and goat yogurt.
A little charcuterie board.
A little goat themed event. for
That's actually
engineers.
kind of cute. There we go.
We get goat ones.
But
Okay, I'm taking this too far. Okay.
speaking of events, though, and with the tea of the week, go check out our Instagram at My Best Friends an Engineer, where you can submit your tea of the week and stay tuned for any events that are coming up. We are planning some big things, so just wanted to plug that in there.
Yeah, we'll be updating you guys in each of the episodes following, but essentially we are planning something for fall time this year. We want to be mindful of like trying to have virtual events as well, because we know not everybody is from good old Chicago and Wisconsin like we are. So stay tuned. We'll give you more updates. But I think we can get into the tea of the week from our listeners. So this one from Madison says, I quit my environmental internship because they didn't have a project for me and I was pulling weeds. Girl, I don't think I can blame you. I would be probably very annoyed to be pulling weeds too.
Props to Madison for realizing that that was not worth her time, because I feel like if I was in an
Yeah.
internship, and like we talked about this a little bit in our one of our last episodes when we were talking about the summer and how, you know, maybe if you're a freshman, like I was interviewing for this one position, but it was literally just moving boxes for them. So I didn't start it, but I feel like if I did start it, I just wouldn't be able to quit. I'd be like, okay, I need it.
I know.
Like I need to just keep doing it. But props to her.
Props to
Also,
her.
that sucks that they made you pull weeds.
Ain't nobody got time for that, okay?
No, just do it at your own house. Don't do it for them. Do your own gardening. So the tea of the week that I'll read is from Taylor. She said, I'm starting my co-op soon and I just learned that a guy I used to go out with is also in that same co-op.
That is some tea.
Oh man. Well,
That is some
keep
piping
us
hot tea.
updated.
Um,
Gosh, I can imagine.
I have a weird thing to share that is kind of goes along with today's episode, kind of also with that tea of the week. But when I was a co-op, there was this guy who was also a co-op who like took a weird liking to me. And one day I was driving home from work and he called me and he like proclaimed his love to me over the phone and asked me out. And I was like, oh, ha, ha, ha. So flattered, but no thank you. And then he would sit in my desk in the mornings and wait for me to come to work so that he could say good morning to me. So then I eventually told HR.
My gosh.
And he had to talk to. And it stopped. But tea.
Yeah.
That is some tea.
But going off of that, also that would be interesting to talk about like that experience of you going to HR and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And dive deeper into that if someone's going through that. But so that internship I was talking about my freshman year, it was actually the company of a guy that is his family's company.
Mm-hmm.
And we like, you know, had a little thing like freshman year, first semester. And then when I found out that that was the company, because I was working with a recruiting firm, I was like, no, wait.
You were like,
first of all, the boxes.
What are the odds?
Yeah, I was like, first of all, the box thing, yeah, okay, can't do that. And then second of all, that was just cherry on top. I was like, unreal that it would be his family's company.
Literally. But, oh my gosh.
Yeah, so awkward. When things come full circle. Okay, well, basically, good luck to you. Keep it professional.
And keep us posted.
Don't sweat it.
I want to know what happens.
I know,
Next tea of the week. Let us know your update.
So I think now we can get into our episode.
Yeah, and if you guys like this episode, please share on your stories, leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you do so, take a screenshot and submit it to our Google Forms, which is in the link in our bio and also in the show notes, because we're giving away a $100 Visa gift card for people that do leave a review. So, if you like it, be sure to share this with your friends, other girlies who might be in STEM or male-dominated fields. And with that, I think we can get into it.
Yes. So, to give some background, we're going to just go chronologically. We both took notes as we went on, so we thought it would just be interesting to kind of talk through our notes and like significant moments that we were like, oh my gosh, or we had some input on. So, okay, my first note is right from the beginning when Jane, I believe, was sad that her daughter told her that she wanted to be a scientist just like her.
Yeah.
And she was crying and started crying, and that's just crazy to me, you know? And it's because everyone's like, oh, you know, science and STEM is such a respectable field. Everyone is so excited. But the fact that she had such a terrible experience throughout her career that she was just so, you know, didn't want her daughter to go through that. I was just like, oh my gosh, like I can't imagine my daughter, you know, saying that to me, and then I would be scared that she would go through the same thing.
I got so sad when, like, that's what opens up this documentary is she's like putting on her Tyvek suit, getting ready to like go in a clean room or something. And she's talking about this experience with her daughter, and it is so true. And it's something that I've like people have asked me before, like, oh, like, do you want to have kids one day? And I'm like, well, I've just never really thought about it. But that is something that it's like, wow, that is so sad to think that like when you're a little girl or something, you're so excited to do science, or like you love math, or you want to be an astronaut or something, and like society over time, like with these systemic systems, just puts you down until you're at this like the bottom of the barrel where you're feeling so sad and depressed about like the realities that come with being in STEM.
Definitely.
Okay, so basically, then in this entire documentary, it goes through a couple of these really significant women that are in STEM. So, for example, one was a professor of biology at MIT, one was a professor of oceanography, one was a chemist. And something that really stood out to me was just like these overlying messages that they kept talking about being like, women in STEM are treated like trash. How do we break the system and make it welcoming to more women? And then another thing that kind of was stood out in my head that was significant in the beginning of this show was when they said that we all have images of in our head of what a woman and a man is. When you ask someone to draw a picture of a scientist, it's a man. And that, oh, when I was watching that, that like hit my heart because I was like, that's so true. When you think about like when we were growing up, I don't know, you think of like Bill Nye the Science Guy or like Sheldon from what is that? The Big Bang Theory or whatever,
Yeah.
or like any of the space shows like Star Trek and Star Wars, any of those like sci-fi shows, it's always men who are the main characters. And so there really isn't like a place in cinema or anything that is representing strong women in STEM. And that made my heart throb. I was like, oh my God, these poor little girls who are getting so excited to become engineers and scientists one day, and there's no one for them to look up to.
Yeah, and they did bring up the Bill Nye the Science Guy thing, and so I was watching this with Joey, and we were like talking. We're like, okay, what would the girl version be? Like Bill Nye the
Mm-hmm.
Science Guy, it kind of rhymes. Like what would the girl one? Be? We were trying to think of a name. We're like I don't even know, but we're like Shirley the little STEM girly,
Oh
something
my
like
God,
that.
Shirley the STEM girly. I love that. Oh my gosh. All right, anyone
Sorry,
listening, if your name
I
is Shirley, you need to become the next Shirley the STEM girly girl.
I'm just, making light of your point, which is significant, but I just needed to
Yeah.
add that in there. I was like, because it is a good point. Because again, and they put all these excerpts in there, like these little shows to show, like, when you think of the Big Bang Theory and all that stuff, again, it's just like subliminal.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing that this show does a really good job of is throughout, these women telling their stories, they will put stats on the screen, and the stats are like astonishing. Like it's honestly overwhelming how depressing these stats are. But for example, one of them was showing that in 2017, employed scientists and engineers out of those people that were employed was made up of 71% male and 29% female. And they were just talking about how like STEM and the sciences is just this like man's club or like this boys club. You think of like all these men like sitting around a leather room like smoking cigars talking about science, and you know back then that's probably what the scene looks like, and it really hasn't changed too much to today. Like it's still very much a boys club. I mean, if you think about it, at work people are always talking about like, I don't know, like cars and hunting. I mean, we're in the Midwest, so hunting is like a big thing here. But lots of like, things that women traditionally don't really take interest in. So, yeah, just wanted to kind of touch on that because I thought that was interesting.
Hunting, that has never luckily come up in work
Really?
conversations for me. Yeah, not for
Oh,
me.
oh
I
my
don't know.
gosh. No, like
I
in
think I'd start
November,
laughing.
in
I'd
November, there's this like hunting week, and like it's known that you cannot schedule meetings in this one week because all the men take off to go hunt. Isn't that weird? Maybe it's
That's
just a
so funny.
Wisconsin thing.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think I think it's definitely a Wisconsin thing because it's funny. Someone listening to this and like where
California or
LA.
something.
Yeah, I
Oh
was just
yeah,
gonna say LA. They're like hunting. They're like, what do you
yeah.
guys do over there?
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, my next point was when we were talking about Watson and Crick, which was, or not when we were talking, when the documentary was talking about Watson and Crick. I think the woman's name was Nancy.
Hmm.
So it was Nancy Hopkins. She was talking about how she was working in, I think it was Watson's lab. I didn't really, take as in-depth notes as Libby did
Yeah.
for this
I
one.
think it was Watson's lab, and this Francis Kirk guy came in.
Yeah. And it was so interesting because that was super cool. First of all, that's stuff you read in your textbooks. I remember middle school learning all about this, and you can tell that she was just so excited about the role as well. But it was crazy because the story was that when Crick entered the lab, he literally just put his hands on her breasts.
What would you do in that
I would
situation?
say, uh-oh, what you looking for?
Uh-oh. Sir, I think you misplaced your hands.
I said, uh-oh, that's not the Petri dish.
Yeah. I
But
don't know what I would do. Like, in any of these situations or scenarios that are in the show, it's so easy to like sit and watch and be like, oh my god, I would have totally been like, put it to the man and like, don't do that and don't. But like in the moment, oh, I probably would have frozen up and just not done anything.
yeah, and that's my next point. So we'll get into it, just like about the responses. But you never hear about that. Like in these textbooks, I never would have thought about this. That Crick, it just changes your thoughts on this person. And also, we can talk about that Dave guy that just got
Oh my
dragged
god.
through.
Yeah.
Oh my god, can't wait to get to that. But
Yeah.
it was crazy that I was learning about this in middle school, 7th grade. I remember literally exactly what, you have those like core memories. I remember what seat I
Mm-hmm.
was in 7th grade, watching these documentaries. And then now I'm 24 and I'm watching this documentary about a person that I learned about when I was, 13, I guess, at
Mm-hmm.
7th grade age. And it's just crazy. It's just, I just didn't expect that at all.
Yeah. Yeah, and so a little background for those who don't know who Francis Crick is. He was part of the like group of people that discovered the structure of DNA. So obviously, if you're like a woman in science at that time, like I can't even imagine, you know, seeing in the newspaper or whatever, like the structure of DNA has been discovered, and then that person walks into your lab, like I don't know what you would do. Like, so basically the point of her Nancy's story is she was saying that like at the time she was working so hard to become like a tenured professor at MIT, and all she wanted to do was work so she could prove herself that like she was producing just as good as results as like the other men in that were working in the labs. So like obviously she doesn't want to say anything. She doesn't want to like sacrifice, all of her hard work for what she's trying to achieve, which I think is still like sadly a pretty big theme that we see with women in STEM today is like women are putting in these hours, like doing these crazy tasks, picking up extra work, being so stressed at work just so they can prove themselves that they're like just as good and deserve to be there.
Definitely.
Next, I think we can get into a little bit, sharing a little bit about Jane's story, which Jane's story is honestly, I was shocked that like it was real. Like I've always heard of things like that happening, but like to hear it from somebody of their experience of having such terrible sexual harassment while they're in school was just so shocking to me. And it was really sad, like to watch and hear her explain it.
Definitely. And you could hear as you were watching the quivering in her voice. And you can tell
No.
that it was just so hard to replay, and it was kind of hard for her to come and speak out about this. But let's drag that guy's name a little bit more. His name is Dr. Dave Marchant
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. I thought it was so cool that they just put his name in here and we're just ripping him apart. Because I was trying to look up a little bit, what he did. So basically, some background about this story. They went on a trip to Antarctica for their research, and he was a professor at Boston University, received a lot of funding, had a very reputable, was very reputable, had a very good reputation. And, this team, it included Jane, who he just ripped her apart. He just was
Mm-hmm.
so everything. It was crazy. It was from making fun of when she had to go to the bathroom to calling her a slut. But that is, calling her a slut. And that's when I started thinking, how do you not respond to something? How,
Mm-hmm.
in that scenario, if someone did that to me, I would lose it. But
Yeah.
then you have to take into consideration that these are different times. We have come very far. And again, to your other point earlier, how do you not respond to something like you said? So, sometimes you just freeze up. But I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
that was just, I don't know, because her whole thing was that she was pretending it wasn't bothering her, and then he just kept going, made
Yeah.
it worse, to try and get a reaction. So
Yeah.
maybe that was the best scenario or best way to act in this scenario, pretending you don't care. But I don't know. Props to her, because I would not have been able to keep it together that long. I would have been like, I would have had to try and think of something funny to respond. But
Yeah, I don't know, and it's so hard. So basically, this woman Jane, I don't know if this was during her postdoc. I think that's what they were calling it. I think that's what you have to do to get your PhD. But it's basically field work in Antarctica, and she was saying like this is a dream come true. Like this is like getting the best scholarship or getting into the best school, whatever that feeling is for you. That was like that for her, learning that she could like have this opportunity to go work in Antarctica. She described how like she was on a team of men, and essentially once you were outside of the bounds of the university and in the field, like the filters came off. And they were saying that it kind of started with this what is that comedy show?
SNL.
SNL, yes. It was an SNL skit where they go like, Jane, you ignorant slut. And so that's what the guy was calling her, like saying this, just talking about how slutty she was when they were working together. He was talking about like all these men that he thought that he could hook her up with. And anytime she went to the bathroom, he'd throw rocks at her. Like, what the fuck? Like, oh my god, how is that acceptable? How? Literally a man in power. You're a professor. Think, okay, Lexi, what, like, because you did research, kind of, not, kind of the same thing. Like, what would you have done if, like, Dr. Jones or someone in, like, the chemistry department was doing this to you?
Well, 100%, I would have gotten a paper trail. I would have videotaped. I would have just put my phone,
But,
either
like, I
put a
don't, did they
memo.
have phones?
That's again, that's the different times, like they don't have
Yeah.
like, so, but in this situation, I would have totally just had the proof, because again, she had to go. And I think one of the comments was, so there was a trial that was done for this, and that's why he got fired. And now his
Mm-hmm.
reputation is not so shiny anymore as it shouldn't
Yeah.
be. And it was just hard to get that evidence. And so again, we just love these paper trails. But that's what I would have done. I would have videotaped.
Mm-hmm.
I would have blasted him. And again, social media right now, I think one benefit is that the people who need to get canceled kind of do
Mm-hmm.
that,
You
because
could
you have
totally
that proof,
blast
and you
them.
can, yeah, and then you can get that support on media. But again, different times. It's just a
Yeah.
completely different situation. And I think you made a point earlier, and you're like, this is shocking that this actually happened. And you're like, okay, it kind of seems like it's a movie. Actually, it is a movie, because it's a documentary. But
Yeah.
but but again, and to your point, I agree with that. It's just crazy, because nowadays we don't get comments, and we've touched on this. All of our comments, I hate comments about being a woman in STEM. It's digital, like
Mm-hmm.
online. You never really get a very straightforward, unless someone's having a really bad day or someone is really dumb, but they will get booted out of the workforce very fast. We
Mm-hmm.
never really actually go through that. So it's hard to comprehend. And that's why you have to, because it was easy during the documentary to be so frustrated. I'm like, how could she have accepted that for so long?
Mm-hmm.
And then just got to bring it back. I kept trying to make myself remember that it was different times,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah, and I think it was also kind of crazy, and I could totally relate to when she was saying, she basically said like she knew this whole time that these actions were wrong, but like in the back of her head, she just kept saying like, I'm gonna do something about this later. Like I need to focus on my science and my work. That's what I'm here for. And I think I probably totally would have had a very similar mentality to her too. Like if you think about going on some sort of trip to gather data, like being a very data driven person, that's your goal. That is what you are there for. So like always trying to bring it back to that. One thing that I just remembered about while we were talking about this, one of the stories she shared was there's this mountain they were having to climb up to like gather data or something. And it was very hard to get up the mountain. And she got like almost to the top of the mountain, and this stupid professor like pulled her backpack and like shoved her back down to the ground. and she just like fell down at the bottom of the hill and was just like crying. Oh, I would have lost it. I don't know, like watching this was made me so sad, and like I just can't believe that there are women in STEM that are having to deal with things like this.
I know. I would have gone up and pulled his backpack and thrown his back. I would have been so mad. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and it's again, like you said, you don't know if you're gonna actually do that in the moment, but just thinking and listening to that made me so frustrated. I was like, oh my gosh,
Mm-hmm.
how did you let this happen? But
Well, and I think it's crazy because a lot of these powerful men in the industry, like this David Marchant guy, he was in charge of providing so much funding for the research. And I'm sure you know, if you don't get the funding, it's very hard to do the research. So, like, oh, I can't even imagine, kind of being at the mercy of the guy that gives you the monetary opportunity to continue to pursue what you're trying to get done.
definitely. And I think another individual towards the end of the documentary came out and spoke about her experience in the lab, but she was anonymous.
Hmm.
And she explained how one day this Dr. Marchand, whatever, I don't even want to call him doctor. I don't even want to give him the,
He doesn't deserve it.
yeah.
Piece of
Uh,
shit.
so this guy straight up told her, he's like, I'm going to make sure that you don't get funding. And I'm like, oh my gosh. See,
Literally, that
again,
he was like, "I'm gonna make sure you have no future in science," or whatever he
yeah.
said. Can you
And so
imagine?
no, I can't. That's why it was so hard to wrap my head around this. I
Hmm.
would have been like, okay, sir, well, I'm gonna make sure you get fired.
Yeah. Well, there was it kind of reminded me because I had not I'm not going to say it's a similar experience because it wasn't, but an experience where my freshman year I went into one of my professor's offices and I like scheduled an appointment with him because I wanted to express my frustration because we were doing a group project. I was the only girl and there was three other boys and we had to like build this airplane and the okay, so I had never used like power tools before that, but that doesn't mean I couldn't learn or anything. So like while we were trying to build this airplane, I kept being like, "Hey, can you guys like show me how to use this? I really want to, make sure I'm using this time to also know what we're doing here." And they wouldn't let me use the power tools. They're like, "Oh no, like I've used this before with my dad. Let me just do this real quick. It'll be easier. It'll take so much more time to explain to you how to use this than I can just do it quickly." And so I went to his office, my professor, and I was like, I think this is just kind of really frustrating because I don't know what to do. That's why I'm coming to you. Like, I want to let you know that I tried to use power tools with my group members, but they wouldn't let me. And he basically like looked at me and he was like, "Well, this is going to be your entire career. This is what it's like to be a woman in engineering. So if you don't like it, maybe I would recommend doing like graphic design." That's what he told me. He said, "You should switch your major. You still have time." I was like, oh my God, like, kind of goes into the whole theme of this documentary, the subtle forms of sexism that are shown to women in the industry. It's not just like what you see in the media, which is the blatant sexual assault, but it's also like all these little things. They related it to like an iceberg. All these little things under the iceberg that you don't see that is just putting women down. And obviously, why would you want to work in an industry then if like all these people are doing these things to you, you know?
Exactly. So did you do anything? Did you like report that professor or
I didn't like I think I was just so shocked. I didn't report it. I didn't know who I would have even reported it to, like maybe the dean, but I was also a freshman, so I like didn't know many people in the engineering industry yet. He ended up getting fired. I don't know why.
really?
Like I know. I don't know why he ended up getting fired. But he was no longer there like after freshman year. But yeah, I mean, I guess I totally should have reported it, but that kind of goes into with all these stories of these women. Like in the moment, it's like you don't really know what you're supposed to respond with.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh God, that's so frustrating. All right,
Mhm.
on to my next point. So this is Rachel. So Rachel was another individual in the documentary. I thought it was so cool when she was explaining her story of how no high school teachers pushed her, or no one really focused on promoting or encouraging the girls to go into the STEM field.
Mhm.
She pushed herself. So she said, "I just kept showing up." And I thought that was so cool. I love that. And I think, again, if you're a woman in STEM, you have to have a little bit of that mentality as well. So I thought that was
Yeah.
very cool.
Oh, she was another woman whose story I feel like really touched my heart. She shared that one time she was sitting in her office. She's a chemistry professor. She was sitting in her office, like working on her computer, had papers spread out all in front of her with like all this data and stuff. And someone came in and asked if she was the janitor. And she was like, I'm literally sitting in an office that has my name on it, on a desk, working at a computer. Like, what? Like, I just cannot believe that happened. And something similar happened to me where in my first co-op, I was walking around the plant. It was like a manufacturing facility with my boss. And one of the contractors asked if I was his secretary. And luckily my boss stood up for me and my boss was like, no, this is my engineering co-op, but far too often there, is this mistake for being mistaken for a different role, I guess is what I'm trying to say, that often happens to women in STEM.
Definitely. That is crazy. Yeah, I really liked her story.
Another thing that really stood out to me in her story was when she was saying the amount of times that she spends keeping her paper trail, which I thought was interesting, something we always talk about in this podcast. But it was also like so true and sad, where she was like, you receive as women in STEM, unfortunately, so often inappropriate, unwanted emails, and you really can't just say what you really want to say. You can't just respond and be like, "You stupid dick, stop doing this," or whatever, like to people who are calling you out. So you have to spend all this time sitting at your computer curating these responses to emails that you have to get done in order for you to continue to do more science. And another moment that was really pulling on my heartstrings when she was saying, like, sometimes it's discouraging as a woman in STEM because you look around in the industry at all these men who are accomplishing all these things, or getting all this data or doing all these experiments, and you're like, how are they getting all of this done? And then she was like, oh, because they don't have to spend a significant portion of their time every day curating email responses. And I was like, wow, I so feel that so hard, trying to figure out the best way to word it so that you don't offend somebody for offending you.
Definitely. Yeah, and you want to word it so you don't seem dumb and
Mm-hmm. Okay, so another very interesting story that is shared in this documentary is with Nancy. And Nancy was the professor of biology at MIT. And she basically explained how during her time at MIT, she had a very, very small lab. And she was doing some experiments on these zebrafish, which obviously fish require fish tanks, and that will take up a lot of space. And she couldn't get larger lab space. And a lot of the men in the field were being like, oh, do you really think you can handle a bigger lab? Like, are you sure you're going to like, we think you might have a hard time, running all these experiments. And, she was saying that back then, and even still now, women are seen to be like always polite and have to be nice. And so what she did was she stayed like after hours at night, and she went around and measured every single lab and put like the person's name to who, like, the space that it belonged to. And she did like this whole study, the paper trail, the data, she collected the hard data and she presented it. And she was like, look, these are the facts. Women do not get as much lab space as the men. We need to change this.
yeah, I think that was the situation. It was she was saying that she had a smaller lab compared to everyone else, and they were like, "Oh no, everything is equal." And then she proved that. It was so funny because she was telling the story, just like, and then someone came in and they just saw this weird old lady, like, or not old lady. Oh crap, cut that. If she listens to this, I don't want to call her old.
Okay.
She was, and she was telling the story about how she was measuring the lab at night, and someone came in, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this lady is just randomly walking around with a tape measure." But I actually really liked that point because it just again goes along with the Rachel's point about I just kept showing up and she was pushing herself. I just thought Nancy, when someone I relate because when someone tells me I can't do something, I get motivated. I'm like, okay, I'll
Yeah.
prove it to you. So just like she proves, this I'm right. I'm gonna show you the facts. I loved that.
Mm-hmm.
And then she made a comment, and it was that's when I became a radical. Oh, God, I stuttered. Okay, sorry, I'm messing up so much. And then within her story, she also included a quote. It was, "That's when I became a radical advocate." I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I'm like trying to rush because I know you have to leave at 3. So I'm like, blah, blah, blah.
No, it's okay.
And then within her story, she said a quote that stuck out to me. "That's when I became a radical activist, I guess." And it was showing how, she wasn't trying to do this, but because she was making this stand, which didn't seem like anything too crazy, she became the radical advocate. So they were like, oh, she's being radical right now. She's
Mm-hmm.
doing all this, they were kind of making it like a big deal. I don't really know what the word is. Or maybe they were calling her dramatic, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's just
Mm-hmm.
for trying to prove this.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting, and this was also another like example in the documentary of when a woman was being her role was being mistaken. She said she often felt like she was being seen as a technician rather than a faculty member, in the fact that like a technician maybe would just be someone who's constantly running experiments for someone, but she was like a faculty member, which held like a lot more weight, a lot more respect. She had a lot more responsibility as a faculty member. And I don't know, like I just think it's so funny. She was like, I'm gonna fight these guys. Like I'm gonna prove it to them that like this is wrong. She went around and she like reached out to other women that were in the department, in the sciences department, and they all had very similar experiences. Something that also kind of stood out to me within that story was like, so they get all these women together kind of in a room, and they're kind of shy, they don't want to like be seen as weaker than the other women or whatever by sharing their stories. And they eventually, start chatting, and like stories are coming out, and they had realized that none of them had taken family leave. And that was also so shocking to me. And they're like, there's just this stigma that like you're being seen as weaker if you take leave to like, maternity leave or family leave or something like that, that the women in those departments weren't doing, because they didn't want to lose their role as faculty member at MIT.
definitely. And I can see myself doing that same thing. I can relate to that,
Mm-hmm.
trying again. I guess I can't really relate this. I feel bad trying to relate this to my life because I know I don't have it as bad as them. So if you're listening to this and this is how it came across, I do not think that we both
Mm-hmm.
are. I'm sure you feel the same way. But
Yeah.
I kind of related to the PTO. I'm like, okay, I don't want to take PTO. And I know someone listening to this is probably like, that's not the
Yeah.
same thing. But, and we just spun it a little bit. I know that my life wasn't wasn't as hard as, what they had to go through. But
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I was like, measuring out the rooms, that is totally something that I would have done. Like, what
yeah,
a
I know.
savage.
I loved it. So that was just kind of like a very, very big overview of what the documentary actually entailed. It was kind of broken up into the stories of these different women. We definitely
Mm-hmm.
recommend to check it out. I think we'll
Yeah.
close this episode out with saying a few quotes, maybe a little bit of the background behind those quotes, but it's just so much to touch on within a
Yeah.
podcast episode. So one quote that I absolutely loved was, "The women who laugh," and this was Jane. Jane was the individual who went to Antarctica with the doctor that was fired
Mm-hmm.
from Boston University. So she said, "The women who laugh are the women that stay in science." So this quote was related to, I believe, Jane's colleague was telling a story about how there was a professor and he went and like gave his hotel cards
Oh,
to like, do you
yes.
remember that? Yeah, where
Yes.
he was giving his hotel cards to, I think, women that were working in his lab that were younger, and they just laughed it off. They're like, haha, okay, threw the card back at him. And that's when she said, "The women who laugh are the women who stay." And that was a very significant quote because she kind of related to that. She, not necessarily laughing, but she was putting up with everything that was going on in Antarctica. I guess this quote can be changed to, "The women who put up with this are the women that
Mm-hmm.
stay in science," instead of the women that speak out. Those are the ones that get kicked out of the field, she was explaining.
Yeah, that was also a very significant moment that was kind of crazy to think about and reflect on. She was talking to one of her male colleagues who witnessed all the sexual harassment that she went through in Antarctica. And he was saying like, no, like shouldn't we be proud of those women for kind of just laughing it off and like being able to put up with it? And she was like, why are we being proud of these women when it's about the man's behavior essentially? And she was told a story that I totally resonated with. She's like, think about it. You're at a conference and have a professor who hits on you and you feel really uncomfortable. So you just laugh it off. And it makes you kind of like feel bad about yourself. Whatever. You go throughout the conference. At the end of the day, he says, do you want to go across the street and get a drink at the bar and like continue to talk about science? And then you're thinking, oh, this is a great opportunity for me to present my research to somebody in a more intimate space. You go, he continues to hit on you. and you feel bad about yourself, you go back to your hotel room, whatever. And then she was saying those women, like if eventually they get noticed for their work, their colleagues are going to be like, oh, well, the only reason that, their work was picked out was because that one time at that one conference, she went and got a drink with the professor and then probably slept with him. And it's just like this story that like needs to be broken, but unfortunately hasn't been broken yet about like women in the industry.
Definitely, like women, their work is always minimized and just
Mm-hmm.
because of circumstances that are not true.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of going along with that, one of the stats that really stuck out to me in this documentary was saying that 50% of women that are in faculty for the STEM fields experience sexual harassment. And definitely recommend going to watch this documentary. But it was so interesting. Like I kind of mentioned earlier, they said sexual harassment in the workplace is kind of like an iceberg. Like what gets the most attention, what's in the public eye is like the unwanted sexual attention or like the sexual assault. But what's like not in the public eye and something that affects women multiple times every single day is discrimination, such as being left off of an important email that you need to respond to, not being invited to a meeting, subtle exclusions, like if your coworkers go out to lunch or something and you get excluded, hostility, being passed over for promotions, relentless pressure to go on a date with you, and then sabotaging equipment. And so many of those things, I felt like, oh, I could kind of sit there and be like, well, this many times I was left off of an email. There was this many times where a meeting was had and for some reason they forgot to invite me, and then I had to somehow, like, it was my responsibility to get caught up to speed because they didn't invite me. Like all of these things that happens as a woman in STEM that you don't necessarily think of as sexual assault, but like compounded on top of each other significantly impacts people.
So I had one more quote that I wanted to bring up. It was, "You get used to being invisible in science." I'm not quite sure who said that. I didn't note that, but I thought
Mm-hmm.
that was a very significant quote. I think, again, it goes along with your last point about women their work being minimized for certain circumstances that might be brought up or just are that
Mm-hmm.
are kind of irrelevant, in a lot of situations. And I can kind of relate. Again, I don't want to try and relate too hard because I know that I am very fortunate and I have not had to go through all this. But in general, I just, that was my experience. I just didn't want to mess
Mm-hmm.
up. I just thought I was always the quiet one in class. I was always just overthinking everything. And even in the research lab, too, I never really, it was always just overthinking everything. And I don't
Yeah.
know if that's related to being a woman or just my personality, but I just kind of related to that quote in that way.
Yeah, kind of going off of that, I think I remember too, they were saying that, while you also are feeling invisible, you're at the same time trying to put on a good face and like fit in. And no matter what you do, no matter what you wear, no matter what you talk like, no matter what your science is presenting, you're still not like one of them or like, be a part of this boys club. And that just like, I don't know what the solution is to eventually have us be one of them. I don't know if there's always going to be this divide between men and women in STEM fields. I hope there's not. But, I think we've made a lot of significant progress. But, just watching this documentary and reflecting on some of the statements that the women in this documentary were saying, it's really like, wow, there's still so much work that needs to be done. Not only with like the equality between men and women, but also like providing women role models and like people to look up to so that women continue to stay in these fields. I think one last thing I kind of want to touch on, similar to what we were just talking about, was they were saying like if we don't find a way to fix this equality issue, like you're missing out on 50% of the science because you're missing out on 50% of the best people in science. And that kind of got me thinking, like, I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but like I always wonder, like back in the day, like way back in the day, like the beginning of America type back in the day, like
Way back, way back
this
yonder.
way back, yeah. This is kind of a tangent, but like all the people who signed like the Declaration of Independence and stuff, like obviously women were never really involved with big decisions. I always wonder, like what would our society look like today if we had that equality not only in the sciences but like just in general with women from the beginning.
That's actually a very interesting thought that I had never thought about, which is
you
kind of
know
makes me feel silly for
Isn't
never
that
thinking that.
like even with science, like what if we would have what if we literally would have figured out time travel by now? Like, that should be dramatic, but like, you just think of all these things that scientifically we think are impossible, but women have only been on the scene for kind of a short period of time in the sciences and only have been taken seriously for a short period of time. So I always kind of wonder, like,
That's so funny.
what would have been discovered, you know?
We would have had time travel by now, so you guys messed up.
Heard it here first.
Heard it here first.
Anyone listening to this, if you found this episode interesting, I definitely would recommend going to check out It's Picture a Scientist on Netflix. I don't know, it was just really insightful. I would love to one day maybe be able to interview one of those women. I'm putting it out there in the universe. I mean, they just seem like such badass women who really just are taking charge of their lives and are accomplishing some incredible things in the STEM industry. And now I have those women to look up to as role models in the STEM space.
Definitely. Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I was going to say it after, off the record. I was going to be like, oh, maybe we should reach out and see if they would want to come on. But yes, we put it out there. We're manifesting it, but that would be awesome.
So like I mentioned earlier, if you guys resonated with anything we said, please make sure you're sharing this with your friends who are also girlies in the STEM space. And share it on your social media. Leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. The Facebook group. You can join our Facebook group.
Yes, join our Facebook group. We can discuss further once you guys watch this. I would love to. Yeah, love to get some more input and thoughts.
Definitely. We're starting our new book for the book club in the Facebook group. We're gonna read the book called Thinking Fast and Slow, which is really interesting. It's just a little excerpt I read on the back of the book and based on some people I've talked to who've read it. It's basically a book saying that like most of us use our fast twitch muscles to make decisions. So you can kind of relate it to like a corporate setting. Like when you're in a meeting, you like kind of do your instinct of what you need to say in a pressing moment. But like sometimes maybe there are moments where we could use our slow twitch muscles and kind of sit on a decision a little bit longer. So anyway, join the Facebook group if you want to do the book club. We're going to start that in August.
Amazing. Well, if they want to find you and DM you their thoughts all about this show or this movie, where can they find you?
Yeah, if you guys want to follow me on Instagram and TikTok, it is at LibbyBeyondTheLabel. And where can they find you, Lexi?
You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at EngineerLexi.
And then if you guys want to follow the podcast, make sure you're definitely following us on Instagram at My Best Friends an Engineer. That's where we do all of the like tea of the week. If you want to be included on the beginning portion of our episode, we have a question box up for that. And then TikTok, we're also My Best Friends an Engineer.
And then on YouTube, we are BFE Podcast.
And with that, thank you guys so much for listening to another week episode of My Best Friends an Engineer. I think we can close it out.
Yes, alrighty. I'm Lexi.
And I'm Libby.
And thanks for listening to My Best Friends an Engineer.